Well, that was interesting. Alright, I really did enjoy this episode for the most part. I thought it was one of the most experimental episodes of the show in a long time, at least in regard to how it presents itself. There's such an absolutely bonkers structure and pace to this episode that was incredibly refreshing, especially because it allowed the story to breathe at multiple points, which is a massive problem I've had with the latest era of the show. It somehow manages to make 45 to 50 minutes feel like 20. This episode, though, managed to hit character beats, allude to greater mysteries, and develop the plot very nicely, even introducing three-dimensional side characters for once. That being said, the ending was quite rushed, or maybe just not alluded to properly. I'm not really sure which camp it falls into, but it is emblematic of a greater problem with the Pantheon saga of Doctor Who. In hindsight, The Giggle and The Devil's Cord, while they don't have poor endings per se, definitely undervalue the gravitas of having literal gods be the villains of the week. It's a criticism I saw at the time of release for both episodes, but kinda didn't see it myself until Empire of Death did whatever the fuck it did, and this episode firmly solidified that gods shouldn't be in Doctor Who, or at least not crammed into a single 45-minute episode of TV. I'm not saying that the resolution of feeding Lux an infinite source of light is exactly bad, it kinda makes sense. It maybe would have made more sense if it was alluded to or built up to properly, because yes, there were hints, but there was no real connecting the dots moment, at least for me. But it just felt a little bit too easy for a being that should be, like, insanely powerful. And yes, I suppose that is also a criticism of Mr. Ring-a-Ding. Okay, I do like Mr. Ring-a-Ding. I think he's funny enough, animated brilliantly, and excellently incorporated into a live-action setting. But this is supposed to be the physical embodiment of the God of Light. I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with this if the Doctor didn't act so fucking scared every time he runs into one of the Pantheon. Seriously man, he has an easier time defeating these unbelievably scary and borderline unstoppable foes than he does stepping off of a fucking landmine. That episode actually had some stakes, something I would like to see when I'm being faced with, supposedly, one of the most formidable forces in the known universe. Or as the Doctor puts it in this episode, beyond the known universe. Okay, rant out of the way. I loved the way that Mr. Ring-a-Ding evolved at the end of the episode, going from a really neat 2D animation to some horrific contraption that looks like it was painstakingly crafted on Blender for a Backrooms video. I also loved the voice acting and some of the quirks of the character, even if they do bug me as part of the said bigger issue. Like the fact that when the song starts, he has to finish the dance before he does anything else. That was honestly quite funny. I also really liked the part where the Doctor and Belinda get animated, and thought that the progressive animation that was reflective of Scooby-Doo's development was quite brilliant, and vastly improved a really lame joke about the Doctor being like Velma earlier in the episode. Sorry, I guess I'm allergic to fun. I also adored the underlying joke here that the characters only become three-dimensional through trauma or sadness. That being said, I am getting a little tired of all the meta-humour that Doctor Who has been pushing at us over the last 2 seasons. It was done better in this episode than in The Devil's Cord, I will admit, but it was also far more obnoxious at its worst. Yeah, you probably know which bit I'm going to talk about now. I felt that the scene with the literal Doctor Who fans kinda signalled the downfall of this episode for me. Though it tried really hard to get me to like it by playing the sad man with a box. Oh my god, the nostalgia hit me like a ton of bricks. I never thought I'd hear this in a new episode again. It was still just kind of weird and awkward. Someone saying hashtag RIP Doctor Who out loud, and 3 people all saying that Blink is their favourite episode of Doctor Who inside Doctor Who was just, like, cringy. I appreciate the notion, but still. Not to mention the fact that the production design really overdid this moment by dressing the characters in exclusively Doctor Who merch and having basically nothing but Doctor Who DVDs in their living room. I just wish this scene was written with some subtlety and subtext in mind. The characters just bluntly say everything that's happening, from how they feel about the Doctor to how they're actually fictional, not the Doctor, which came out of nowhere by the way. And then they point out how obvious the ending is because it was lightly foreshadowed earlier, which feels like a way for Russell to pat himself on the back a little bit, when like, dude, you're not doing anything new here, Inglourious Bastards did it 16 years ago. That being said, the rest of the trapped in the cinema stuff was pretty fun. The Doctor literally pulling down each reel and then stopping it to burn the screen was awesome. I particularly loved the verbal backhand to American films for always getting police uniforms wrong, and as much as I didn't like the scene, the entrance into the fans' living room was epic. Such a well executed effect, all the way down to the TV screen being shown to us initially by the little dirt marks and reflections. And maybe it's accidental, but the scene where the Doctor is referred to as a fictional being, prefaced by a white void, emblematic of the white void in the land of fiction? Yeah, I've got too much time on my hands. I also thought that the setting of the episode was brilliant. It truly was the right decision to take the first all non-white TARDIS team to the 1950s and discuss segregation, and touch on themes like racist police, which is still as relevant as ever. However, I wish it maybe touched on it a little more. The only scene where racism briefly played a part was a fabricated scenario inside the film, which was underwhelming. Perhaps it doesn't help that I literally rewatched Human Nature and the Family of Blood the night before this episode premiered, and maybe these themes didn't need touching on so heavily after the episode Rosa came out in 2018, which was 7 years ago. But I don't know, it feels like Doctor Who is a little afraid to commit to any political themes or socio-political education at the minute, something that was 20 years ago the cornerstone of the show. I noticed it in last week's episode too. Russell kinda just keeps throwing out these superficial comments without any themes intrinsic to the story they're in, or any discussion/debate to add weight to it.
Time and society and culture and taste has moved on. I had problems with that, and a lot of us on the production team had the problems with that, of associating disability with evil, and trust me, there's a very long tradition of this.
Go check out Channel Pup's brilliant video on this topic if you want to hear more about this. I pretty much agree with him 100%. Anyway, just a minor gripe. Otherwise, the town looked absolutely beautiful, the little we saw of it, with the neon lights and postmodern structures, and the theatre set was absolutely gorgeous. It was relatively minimal, but my god did it really immerse you in the time period. Who needs the whole cityscape of Miami when this single building completely sells you on the when and where? Gorgeous. I thought the Doctor and Belinda were also much better handled in this episode overall. The Doctor undoubtedly felt more like the Doctor here, and Belinda's character felt so much more natural to me. She wasn't fucking Discord. She wasn't constantly quipping away at everything either, and had genuine human emotions that I could buy. I also felt like we got a bit of Eccleston and Tennant's Doctor back this week, with the Doctor hiding the information that he is the last of the Time Lords. It reminded me quite a lot of Gridlock, but not necessarily in a bad way, as I feel like this season has been dangerously retreading ground from Series 3 already. I particularly loved the diner scene, and have really missed moments like this in the show lately. Just seeing the Doctor be this beacon of hope and goodness who inspires and helps people wherever he can, no matter the time and circumstances, was beautiful. And fuck, I sound like those goddamn fans from the episode now, so yeah, that's probably a good place to end it. Oh, and next week looks fucking awesome. I have a really good feeling that the next 2 episodes are going to be some of the best we've had in a long time. I really hope I haven't jinxed that. So overall, LUX was pretty good. I didn't love it, but I really admired its ambition, and despite my problems with it, I had a good time. And I think the substantial characterization and fleshing out of side characters did wonders to soothe my issues with the episode's plot at times. I was maybe a little underwhelmed by this one in the end, but I'm by no means annoyed with it like I was with last week's episode. 6 out of 10. Not bad. Not bad at all. Thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed the review. Let me know your thoughts on the episode in the comments section below. If you want to go back and check out my previous reviews for this era of the show, click the playlist on the left. And if you want to check out some other shit I haven't decided on at the time of recording, click whatever's there on the right. As always everyone, take care of yourselves and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.